Obama's no apology tour continues in Europe, and a shocking account about what Bowe Bergdahl may have done while being held by the Taliban. This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Chris Wallace in for Bret Baier. President Obama is not backing down over the highly controversial prisoner swap involving Army soldier Bowe Bergdahl and 5 Taliban leaders. Meanwhile, many in Congress are still not buying one of the administration's main selling points for the deal. We have Fox team coverage. Catherine Herridge with the latest White House effort to justify the prisoner exchange. Ed Henry with the president in Paris. But we begin with Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen and a Fox News exclusive. Intelligence reports that during his captivity, Bergdahl declared himself a warrior for Islam. Good evening, James.
Good evening, Chris. According to secret documents obtained by Fox News, Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl, toward the end of his 5 years of captivity among the Haqqani network, was said to have converted to Islam and was, according to one eyewitness account, observed openly fraternizing with his captors, including taking part in AK-47 target practice with them, and had declared himself a mujahid, or warrior for Islam. The documents obtained by Fox News offer the most detailed, real-time accounts yet known to exist chronicling what Sergeant Bergdahl's life in captivity was like, and they show that the wayward soldier's relations with his captors morphed over time, from periods of real hostility, where he was treated very much like a hostage, indeed like an animal, to periods of seeming affection and ideological alignment. The documents were prepared by the Eclipse Group, a shadowy private firm staffed by former intelligence officers and operatives and run by Dwayne Dewey Claridge, a longtime CIA officer best known for having been indicted for lying to Congress in the Iran-Contra scandal and who was pardoned during his trial by the first President Bush. Eclipse was retained through a subcontractor by the Defense Department to provide granular intelligence on a broad range of security-related topics in challenging environments, which came to include the Bergdahl case. In August 2012, Eclipse's agents produced Situation Report, or SITREP, number 3023, which cited a member of the Haqqani network as advising, quote, "Conditions for Bergdahl have greatly relaxed since the time of the escape," which refers to an attempted escape by Bergdahl in June 2010. More about that in a moment. Bergdahl has converted to Islam and now describes himself as a mujahid. The report goes on, Bergdahl enjoys a modicum of freedom and engages in target practice with the local mujahideen, firing AK-47s. Bergdahl is even allowed to carry a loaded gun on occasion, the report said. Bergdahl plays soccer with his guards. He appears to be well and happy and has a noticeable habit of laughing frequently and saying salam repeatedly. Now, about that escape attempt by Bergdahl, senior Pentagon officials tell Fox News there was actually more than one, but that the most successful came in June 2010. On June 7 of that year, Eclipse's agents reported, quote, "According to residents of Miramshah in North Waziristan, the missing U.S. soldier being held by the Haqqanis was seen in the bazaar area of Miramshah on the 5th of June 2010. He seemed not to be tightly controlled." That would prove rather prophetic. A Taliban commander in Waziristan, an Eclipse source advised, a member of the Mullah Sangin faction of the Haqqanis, that's the faction that had control over Bergdahl, claimed that the soldier was moved from Dagon to Shawal, North Waziristan, in early June 2010. About the 17th of June 2010, the soldier managed to escape, but was recaptured after 5 days and taken back to Shawal, where he's being held by Sangin's guards. He is in ill health and has been collapsing, unquote. The terrorists were angry with their prisoner. SITREP number 728. An Haqqani commander in North Waziristan advises that as of the 23rd of August 2010, the Mullah Sangin part of the Haqqani network, which holds the missing U.S. soldier, has begun to construct a metal cage in which to hold him. This is because of his repeated attempts to escape. The cage, misspelled in the original, most likely will be installed at Dagon, North Waziristan, where Mullah Sangin's father owns a house. Finally, these Eclipse reports show that talks about a prisoner swap arose as early as the fall of 2009, and that Bergdahl's captors generally preferred ransom to a prisoner exchange. There is more detail from my reporting, much more, Chris, on my story on the Fox News website, foxnews.com.
Well, it is fascinating stuff, but how do we know, and obviously these are intel reports, how do we know that Bergdahl wasn't acting, pretending to be sympathetic to try to ease his captivity?
The senior Pentagon officials and intelligence experts that I consulted for this story told me that's a very real possibility, that in converting to Islam, in declaring jihad and so forth, that Bergdahl may have been feigning his allegiance. It's also been explained to me that it could be Stockholm Syndrome, whereby a captive sometimes discovers that an allegiance with the people holding him hostage.
In any case, fascinating stuff, and another piece of the puzzle, a big piece of the puzzle. James, thank you.
Thank you.
President Obama had no apologies today for striking the prisoner swap deal. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry is traveling with a defiant president tonight in Paris.
President Obama today had some positive news on Ukraine, with Russian President Vladimir Putin missing from this meeting of G7 leaders that yielded a threat of even more sanctions. Yet at a news conference at the end of the summit, the president was pressed for a second time this week about the firestorm over the Bo Bergdahl prisoner swap.
We had a prisoner of war whose health had deteriorated, and we were deeply concerned about it, and we saw an opportunity and we seized it, and I make no apologies for that.
His latest attempt to end the controversy came amid even more fallout back home about the price of turning over 5 Taliban commanders, after the president's former defense secretary, Leon Panetta, delivered a speech Wednesday declaring during his time in the cabinet he opposed a swap for Bergdahl, telling an energy conference, quote, "I said, wait, I have an obligation under the law. If I send prisoners from Guantanamo, they have to guarantee they don't go back to the battlefield. I had serious concerns." Yet the current defense secretary, Chuck Hagel, told the BBC the war cabinet was unanimous in supporting the president, and they could not follow the law and give Congress 30 days notice out of a fear the mission would leak out. Yet the top Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee, Saxby Chambliss, pushed back hard on the claim of potential leaks, charging the administration made a calculation to intentionally keep him and Dianne Feinstein, the Democratic chair of the Intel panel, out of the loop.
It was like they didn't trust Dianne and me, and yet the two of us knew about the bin Laden event for leading up to the takedown of bin Laden for months and months and months.
Well, the president today seemed to dismiss the controversy as yet another example of what he's called phony scandals.
I'm never surprised by controversies that are whipped up in Washington, right? That's par for the course.
The bipartisan chorus of criticism over releasing the 5 Taliban fighters suggests this may not be going away.
These are all high-level people. This is not low level. This is high level, and these are people that basically have the ability to go back and hit the ground running.
We have now created an incentive for the enemies of the United States to try to capture American men and women in uniform in an effort to exchange them.
Interesting, because White House aides downplayed this controversy, telling Politico it's just being stirred up by Obama haters. But unlike the IRS and Benghazi stories, we've now had 2 straight blowups, VA and Bergdahl, where there's been a lot of Democratic outrage, which may be why the White House is concerned. Chris?
Ed Henry reporting live from Paris. Ed, thanks for that. The Obama administration continues to offer new reasons for the prisoner swap and for why it did not notify Congress before the exchange. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has the latest.
The administration is offering a more nuanced explanation for the Bergdahl transfer and why they insist there was real urgency, now citing his deteriorating health and threats to his security.
We were concerned about it and the possibility that harm could come to him, particularly if once we concluded the agreement, it was made public.
Democratic Senator Dick Durbin, who attended a Senate-wide classified briefing Wednesday night, said a December proof-of-life video was strong evidence that the administration needed to act quickly, but others were not convinced.
Was he in dire straits? Did we have to act now or lose the opportunity the man would die? This is something that we need to put out in the open. You need to look at the video and judge for yourself.
The administration's emphasis on an old proof-of-life video and what it indicated about Bergdahl's mental and physical health raised more questions.
His health was in such grave danger in December when the video was released, and government officials sought what took so long.
When it was released, we were negotiating. We were trying to get him home. So it's not like we were sitting here doing nothing.
He made a decision to bring him home, and I'm glad he did, because in my opinion, based on nothing that went in the classified briefing, in my opinion, every day that he was there was a day closer to his dying.
By midday, the administration was moving away from the proof-of-life video and suggested in a statement from the National Security Council that Congress wasn't notified because the Taliban threatened to kill Bergdahl if the deal became public. Few lawmakers were buying it.
This is going to harden, I think, positions that members of Congress had, that you can't trust these guys.
While military sources tell Fox News that the transfer was seen by the administration as an important step to closing Guantanamo, it may go down in history as the poster child for unintended consequences.
It makes it harder for them to do 2 things:
new transfers from the island, and really hard for the administration to sell the idea that they need to bring some number of detainees to the United States for further detention even after the war is over.
A military spokesman said today that Bergdahl is improving and he's becoming more involved in his treatment plan, which includes working with reintegration experts to overcome what was probably years of solitary. There's no timeline for a phone call to his family or a transfer from the military hospital in Germany, Chris.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
Russia's annexation of Crimea led President Obama and European leaders to freeze out Vladimir Putin from this week's economic summit in Brussels. But they're hoping to bring Putin back into the fold during the D-Day anniversary ceremonies in France tomorrow.
We are at a point where Mr. Putin has the chance to get back into a lane of international law.
I think, as the President said, there is an opportunity for diplomacy to play a role and to chart a path.
French President Hollande is said to be working on getting Putin together with Ukraine's president-elect for what would be a diplomatic icebreaker between the two leaders. Up next, heads roll at General Motors over a safety defect that has led to at least 13 deaths. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates are covering tonight. Fox 5 in San Diego on the investigation into yesterday's crash of a Marine jet fighter into a residential neighborhood. The pilot ejected safely and no one on the ground was hurt. New York's Fox 5 is covering an early morning fire on Staten Island that injured at least 34 people and destroyed 3 homes. And this is a live look from Fox 6 in Milwaukee. The big story there tonight: hopeful news for the girl who was stabbed by 2 others, allegedly to impress a fictional internet horror character. The girl is apparently now walking around the hospital. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.